Hail, great Malx, most holy and cunning of commune, orator of Zaux, master of the Triads, and leader of most superior Zaxoid clan. Why do I find you here at this most accursed place? I enjoy the sight of this ruin. It reminds me that even the mightiest can fall. What brings you here? The Gargaxton Cooperative has refused our demands again. They continue to sell to the children of man at every opportunity and aid the great enemy. Again, Great One, I implore you to crush these heathens. Smite them in their homes in fire to punish them for their insolence. Why do we refrain? Patience. The unbelievers do not understand their folly. Inferior Gargaxton mind only wants for wealth. It blinds them. We must let them see for themselves, or make them all see somehow, that the machines will doom us all to walk this realm. They must see the machines as the enemy before anything else can be achieved. Yes, Infidel Tazat saw too late the error of their way. The machines cannot be beaten alone. Allies required. We cannot expose ourselves to same condemnation nation showed to Tazat agreement. And so, if we punish the infidels now, they will hate us, fear us, destroy us. We must be ready to support the first to speak out against these machines. If we soil our reputation with the stain of warmongers and zealots, then our support only helps the machines appeal to others. They will play victims if they can, just as they did before. We must allow them to ruin themselves first. What if they do not, though? There is not long left until the second apocalypse, and if we spend the entire time waiting and hoping for others to see the true enemy to Ascension, they may only grow stronger. The Triad leaders would rather we take from others and strengthen ourselves, so that we will be strong enough to fulfill our destiny rather than float idle and depend on others to see the truth. No cycle passes where I do not think to attack our closest enemies. The heathens are as great a barrier to ascension as the machines right now. And we are strong enough, yes. But I fear that by doing so, this galaxy will see us as the enemy when the time comes. We may be torn apart by others before the judgment begins. Perhaps my successor will be brave enough to take that risk. But if there is a leader who wishes to risk our entire destiny that way, it is not this leader. Truly, you are wise. But perhaps it is time we found one who would rather trust his own kind, rather than depend on others. If you want something done right, we must do it ourselves. When the great destroyers return and the apocalypse is upon us all, the machines and their administration must not be there to stop them. So the Deep One has proclaimed. So the Deep One has proclaimed.
With the gears of our highly advanced administration ticking over smoothly, and without the constant Eastern Tazat threat, the focus of our scientists and resource investments is no longer on weapons and ships, and instead has returned to pushing the boundaries of science once more. In truth though, we never really stopped. Most of our advancements have gone rather under the radar, as our attention has been occupied with the occupation of Tazat Hyderla and the war leading up to it. But now, without the pressing need to create more advanced weapons or design new technologies with military applications, the Cybrxkhan scientists finally have time to focus on other projects. There is much to do, as the countdown to the awakening of our creators draws ever closer to zero. The new focus of our engineers and Charlie, for example, is on creating drills and mining tools capable of extracting the unique and rare crystals found smattered throughout the galaxy. Whilst there are many crystals of all kinds of shapes, sizes and varieties, human scientists found that a select few were formed in such a way that allowed light, or more specifically lasers, to be focused and even enhanced by them. While the effects produced by these rare crystals could be replicated with technology and man-made focuses, it was an incredibly expensive process, and the equipment needed to reproduce the effects of these crystals was much heavier and larger to reproduce the same effects as a single cut crystal. Now, these crystals have a wide range of applications, including military ones, industrial ones, and even civilian ones. Oftentimes, these crystals were profoundly beautiful, and the richest humans would often use them as decorations or even wear them on rings. Or in the case of the nobles and monarchy of Velotaria, they would not only adorn these crystals on rings, but also use them for necklaces, chandeliers, and even crowns. While the administration has no crowns to ordain with these crystals, or general desire for crystal chandeliers, they still have a rather aesthetic appeal, and can be used in our consumer goods industry. And we can always use them for much more practical and beneficial military purposes should the need arise. And so we await with much anticipation to see what good this rare resource can bring to our administration. And while we await the much delayed introduction of these crystal mines, we must finally address a long-running problem. Our industry has continuously failed to meet consumer good demand. The savant's expression of human desires and needs must be met to ensure their continued productivity. And with the weight of the Tazad adding to that demand now, our industry cannot keep up. However, the issue can be resolved. Our problem is not due to a lack of factories, but rather their priorities. See, under this administration, all our factories are set up to facilitate military production. Our consumer factories spend around 15% of their overall production capacity making the small components of our warships, or just outright refining alloys. This in turn allowed our ally refineries to focus more on streamlining the production of larger ship components. While it made for a very effective and war-ready economy, it left our consumer industry struggling. Now, faced with becoming dependent on trade to endure the shortages, Cortus has made the decision to flip the focus of our industry from military to consumer. For a time being, while we replenish our consumer stocks, our consumer factories will now solely focus on producing the commodities our savants desire, and our ally refineries will divert power from ally production to powering assembly plants, which, instead of making weapons and hulls, will now make ovens, phones, toasters, and all the general goods any savant or human would want. And maybe the odd Tazat good here and there, just to tide them over. And since we've already been running on military-orientated production for so long, this short interlude of consumer good production is of no major consequence to our fleet or our administration. Once a stockpile of goods has been created, we will no doubt return to a more militarized industry. As the industrial complexes of the administration and its planetary domains adapt to the changing demands, another innovative reform is sweeping across the machine empire. As it stands right now, our city architects and engineers constantly have to make compromises when building our cities and their districts. A balance has to be struck between how much space is allocated to land and how much is left for farmland, mines, hospitals, factories, and other critical infrastructures. As the savant population surpasses our initially expected maximum of 60 billion, and with a rising population of Arisians, Tazat, and machines, more space is being devoted to housing them. With so many homes already being used, and with more still to be soon needed, the time has come to maximise our capacity. Just like how we've done in the past, the way this is going to be achieved is to take direct responsibility in management out of the Prime Director's hands, and into a savant-run institution. Just like how many other aspects of our administration used to be, city construction and planning was mostly directed by Quartus, using a minimum amount of savant architects and engineers to assist him. Now, however, an institution of savants who specialise in architecture and city administration have been created. Its purpose is simple: to find ways to make the best use of space devoted to housing. And almost immediately upon the conception of this Public Works division, a slew of plans were proposed by our savants, and after some deliberation, work began almost immediately. One of the first proposals was so simple, efficient, and commonsensical that it is a wonder it has never been done before in the administration. The first radical plan was to simply encourage savants to cohabitate, and by cohabitate they meant live together. For 6 decades now and over, our savants have been largely living alone in rooms or houses built with very little more than one resident in mind. It's not as isolated as it first sounds, as communication between homes is extremely easy, and there are plenty of locations that serve as social gathering and entertainment points. But until now, it was rare to find savants essentially living together, even if they did have adequately sized rooms or homes to do it. But now, with official approval and even encouragement, many savants seem to be all for this new proposal. In just a few weeks, this proposal resulted in a massive increase in our available housing, as savants moved out of their singular dwellings where they could. And while we will need to rebuild much of our accommodations to handle multiple inhabitants, this is a process that can be done slowly, over time, without the need for major resource investments. Noting that the savants devised this plan almost immediately, Quartus has come to realise that many savants may have had ideas like this on how to improve certain aspects of our administration for quite a long time, but only once our savants were given the opportunity and autonomy to contribute their own thoughts and ideas were they themselves capable of proposing these many unique ideas and designs. And so, once again, by relinquishing direct control and allowing savants to use their own minds and act on behalf of Quartus, more is achieved. The results speak for themselves after all. Just weeks after Quartus delegated yet another of his functions to a savant organisation, we saw that they were able to improve our administration. Between all the savant-run organisations combined, it can be said without a doubt that without them we would not be in such a strong position that we are now. With these improvements, the administration can afford to build more productive buildings without having to worry about running out of space to house the new savants. As we continue to optimize the administration, it is obviously no surprise that we have particular interests in advancing our own technology. While we have been steadily advancing our scientific knowledge, most of them, by and large, are minor upgrades that in the grand scale of things are not worth much mention. But now, with our focus returning to science more than ever before, Cairo has been assigned a rather peculiar line of research. When the slightest trickle of information came in supporting the hypothesis that it was possible to extend organic lifespans by hypercharging cell regeneration, Quartus expressed unusual interest in it. While it is not unusual for the Prime Director to order the Cybrxkhan to focus their attention on specific projects, it is unusual that he took an interest in this. As a synthetic himself, and the director of a nation primarily run by savant synthetics or droids, the need for a breakthrough that extends organic life is rather pointless. While synthetics do have organic components, their bodies age extremely slowly already, as their skin and flesh are artificial constructs in of themselves. Their flesh is artificial, their bones are artificial, and while they have many organic components, they are all in the end just organic matter that was created in a vat before being moulded into whatever their creators wanted it to be. As a result, synthetics may age in appearance over time, like how a fabric or metal would slowly lose its shine. But unless a truly long time passes, then no savant should really ever become old.
Construction complete.
So finding ways to preserve cell life is really pointless to a synthetic at this stage. Of course, this research would benefit the Arisians in our ranks, as it will any Tazat should they ever prove themselves safe to be trusted with this technology. But for a synthetic, this technology is still mostly pointless for anything other than keeping their own flesh, or bodies, looking younger. And anyway, with the future we have planned for our Siphons, the concerns of the flesh will not be ones our synthetics worry themselves with for much longer. And knowing this, it's clear that this cell regenerative technology isn't for us, but for our makers. In the short time we have been awake, only 67 years have passed. While that time means little to properly maintain synthetics, to a human, that is long enough to transition from a young adult to an aging and frail individual. While it's true that humans could live long past their normal lifespans, it was only the select few elites with access to specialized, expensive medical equipment. And even for those elites, it was debatable if the life they lived was worth living at all. But now, once this cell regenerative technology is complete, those who will have access to it could theoretically preserve their bodies and hold back the effects of aging for longer. With further advancements, it may even be possible to prevent aging entirely. And that is the true aim of this research. But we don't need to concern ourselves with this right now. The awakening is still decades away, and we have many other things to attend to, and much more research to complete, before we are ready to initiate the second stage of our plan.
Evening all, sorry I'm late. There was an unexpected backlog of traffic. If any of you paid much attention to your traffic feeds this past hour, you'll see what I mean.
No worries, Doctor. I have prepared and anaesthetised the subjects and assembled the surgeons for briefing. As you can see.
Straight to business as always,
Of course. You understand that due to my more mechanical body I do not feel such a desire for chatter as you hybrids. This droid body dampens the emotional subroutines my consciousness would otherwise express in a more hybrid body. In addition, what little organic matter I do have was created using cloning and growth techniques inferior to how your organic parts were made.
When were you activated again?
My unmatured coding was installed into this body 5 years ago.
Ah yes, a little fledgling intelligence you still are then. Give it time, you'll soon develop into a more emotional intelligence. Slowly, admittedly. Your mechanical body certainly won't help. But you will.
If you say so, Doctor. I still do not yet understand why you could simply not have waited until you had proper synthetic bodies available.
Because when we ran out of bodies, the administration still desperately needed more workers. We couldn't wait until we developed the technology. We ran out of synthetic bodies, and what you've got now was the best we could do.
You say that like you thought I might be upset at my largely mechanical existence. I am not. This body has no nerves, and my brain has dull synaptic responses. What little emotion I'm capable of feeling, though, is certainly not sadness.
That's what they all say at first. Alright everyone, quick briefing. Let's review the objectives. And remember that, like usual, this procedure is strictly off the books. Gyro's orders. Now, after many hundreds of trials, we have confirmed our hopes that from the biochemical makeup of the fungi that seem to cohabitate with the Tazat body, we can synthesize serums for variable purposes. Medicine, drugs, fertilizer, vaccines, and a whole slew of other applications we have yet to discover. The fungus that is a part of the Tazat's body has an astonishing range of applications.
However, today, and for the next few months, or maybe years, we will be looking for one application only.
Our creators are kept in hibernation by cryogenic pods, but the human body still requires life support, as outright freezing would normally kill them. As it stands, a chemical agent is constantly pumped through their bodies, which supplies them with everything they need to live. However, the exact formula used is lost to us, and we cannot open the storage vats to take a sample, as the humans prohibited it.
for fear of their life support being tampered with.
However, it is known that the chemical used in the hibernation pods was supplied by the Germans using chemicals found in mushrooms native to what is today known as planet Tazat Hyderla, the former capital and homeworld of the Tazat. The fungi that melded to the Tazat are these same mushrooms, if a slightly mutated and evolved version.
From these Tazat, we may be able to recreate the serum used to keep the humans in hibernation. The storage vats in the bunker, I am told, will reject any serum input that is not a 100% match, and the humans took extreme care to ensure this could not be subverted or hacked. We will have to create thousands, millions of variable serums until we get one right.
You're all here because the Prime Director knows that we are doing this only for the greater good of our creators. But if anyone has any objections to attempting to prolong our creators' hibernation, you must say so now. Once we begin, we will have to keep our research hidden from the watch of Loomis.
Alright then. Now on the other hand, I don't want anyone getting unrealistic expectations. Even if we found the exact serum needed today, there is no way under the stars we can ever produce enough to keep the humans in hibernation indefinitely. That isn't the point anyway. I think we can all agree we don't want our creators waking up in this mess of a world, but there must come a time for all things.
Shall we begin the operation? Can everyone please remember that we do not have an infinite amount of test subjects, so please be conservative with how much sample you harvest from the bodies. I understand we cannot wait for the fungi to regrow, but if you are not frugal, we may be forced to.
Yes, please do mind that. Now let's see. Oh, look, this was exactly her point. We're already on to Group B. Well, Mr. 01B, I'm terribly sorry about this, but your sacrifice will not be in vain. I hear your people are quite fond of honor, and well, who's ever said donating your body to science wasn't an honorable cause? The scientific community thanks you for your contribution. Scalpel.